200 people here, and we're so pleased that you've joined us. We appreciate that it's an hour earlier, and it's Mothering Sunday, and at very short notice you've joined us. Okay, that's fantastic. Now, you were sponsored. Where were you? Where were you brought up, and for how long were you sponsored for?
I am from Bolivia, Cochabamba. I have to say in this, because my family had big need, and the compassion showed all that suffering that my family was having. They took my sister, younger sister, to have a sponsor. I didn't have a sponsor, but I have the same privilege as other children with a sponsor. I've been since 10 or 9 years old to graduate from high school, and then it was just amazing to have all that things that compassion offer. I suppose you will ask more details later.
We will.
But I'm happy to.
That's brilliant, and that's lovely to know that it was your sister that was actually sponsored, because I know lots of people are worried that if you sponsor one child, how does that affect everybody else? But for you, it was a blessing for the whole family.
It's really good to be here. It's a real privilege, actually, to be able to come and share with you in my home church. This is where I first found out about compassion, my first exposure to the work of compassion through, like many of you, I guess, through the passion of David Whitehouse, who was a wonderful volunteer for this charity. And so what I do for compassion is I do this. I visit churches around the Midlands most weeks, and I introduce compassion to some churches, and I update and encourage existing church partners and existing sponsors to keep going with their sponsorship. So it's a real honor to be able to do that. And I want to thank Donald for making space for us to have this time together.
Regina, we have to give sweets out to get questions. I don't know whether they do that in your church.
Well, that would be nice.
Who would like to ask a question? Who would like to ask a question? Allegra, what would you like to ask? Perhaps James will repeat this.
What was your house?
Hang on, let's turn this on.
What was your house like when you were growing up?
Did you hear that?
Not very well, sorry.
She asked, what was your house like where you grew up?
Because my family was in extreme poverty, we didn't have a house. We used to live in a small room, renting, but we never stay in that place for long because my parents couldn't afford to pay the rent. I grew up in a family of 5. I have my older brother, my younger sister. We had to go to the restaurants at the back where the bins are to look for food because it was difficult for my parents to afford that. Or we have to choose between you want the ticket for the bus with this money or you want to buy food with this money. We normally choose food, and that means we have to walk 2 hours to school, just one way, and then come back another 2 hours.
Wow. That's an amazingly different life to ours, walking 2 hours to school and 2 hours back. Yeah, question over here.
How did your sister benefit as well as yourself? Like, what does she do now?
Yes. Before compassion, we never went to a dentist. We never had a doctor review. We didn't have even water for us. Probably our friends always said, you smell. Yeah, probably we smell because we didn't have water. But in compassion, they gave us all the things. They teach us all the things. My sister, she is a teacher now because the pandemic is another situation. But she is a teacher. I also finished. I graduated as a teacher as well.
brilliant. Qualified as teachers, fantastic. We've got another question over here. Nathan. No, not Nathan, sorry. Have a question. Oh, microphone.
What difference did compassion make to your life?
What difference does compassion make to your life?
Did you hear that?
Yeah. There's not, I can't say in one word, but it changed my life, my family, and the view of everything, because I didn't know about God. Compassion gave me God, and then for me, that's the best gift they could give me. Knowing Jesus is the best. Knowing Jesus helped me to take good decisions in my life. Thanks to God, I am where I am who I am. And that is thanks God used compassion so I can know him.
Wow, that's brilliant. We're going to take one more question.
How did compassion help you?
How did compassion help you? Anything to add?
The first thing I would say is, because we used to go to look for food on the bins or ask people, can you give us some food or some bread if you have something? When I went to compassion, I sit on the table. I had cutlery there, my fork and knife. I have my plate and then nice food, and then that was amazing. And I have real food. I have nice food. And then even my teacher at that time on compassion, they said, if you want to have second one, just ask. I said, of course, I want second one, please. That was amazing for me.
Brilliant. Thank you, sir. Cool. All right, Holden wants to know if you have a teapot.
I'm so sorry. We don't have a teapot.
They don't have a teapot. Okay. Regina, you have been absolutely super. We're going to talk to you in about 20 minutes. We're going to have a little chat between you and James. And I've got some questions, which I'm notorious, Regina, for asking questions that I know we've never told any, for changing my mind. But
I'm happy to answer all of them.
bless you. Bless you. We left you in one room as a family when we were talking with the children. Just tell us how things changed from that one room to where you are now. How did that develop? How did that happen?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I ended compassion when I was 19. I was graduate, and then I started to be a teacher. When I was 24, sorry, let me go back a bit. Because we moved different rooms or different places, sometimes that rooms didn't have door, sometimes didn't have window. It was really difficult. But we ended in a big land with one small room in a corner. And the lady who lived next to us, she used to go to a church where compassion was. And she talked with compassion and say, come and see this family. At first, my mom didn't believe that somebody wanted to help us. And then when compassion came to see us, my mom says, yeah, we will come back. We will go where you are saying. But we didn't. She didn't take us. But compassion came back, and they said, we really want to help you. Because what my mom hear, and then we hear is, you won't be anything in life. You are poor, you smell. And then my mom didn't believe that somebody wanted to help us after that many things. But we went to compassion, and then they said, we will take your sister to have a sponsor, and you will come with us too. We have dentists, like I said before. We went to dentist for first time. We got doctor's revision for first time. We got the material to go to school. If we needed any book, they said, let us know which book do you need, and then we will buy. They did. and they give us food, and they just didn't finish there. They were checking all the time in the family, how we are the family, how we are doing. And then if mom get back sick, they always try to arrange to help the family. They didn't help just my sister because her sponsor. No, they helped me. They helped my family. I would say compassion or the sponsor that changed my life completely, but not just my one or like my sister, my whole family. And then I think we can be a blessing for my community in Bolivia as well, because what we are now.
Wow, fantastic. So you qualified as a teacher?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
because of the education and the health that you had received from Compassion. Wow. And do you know anything about the sponsor who sponsored your sister?
I know they were from US. He has 2 girls, and they always send a picture and a letter to my sister. And then every person who's listening to me needs to know this. When you are sending a letter to your children, you are sponsoring, don't think you are how do you say, losing your time, spending time, it won't come back. I've been there. I didn't get the letter, but I saw the other children. When they get the letter, they say, "Oh, I got a letter. Oh, look at this. I got the stickers as well." It's just amazing. If I knew it, well, we didn't have technology, but it's recorded that how excited they get when they get the letter, when they know you are praying for them, when you tell them you love them, you are thinking of them, praying for them. Please carry on. Tell them you're praying for them. Tell them you love them. You are thinking of them. Because while you are doing this, you are not losing anything. You're blessing a life. You are changing a life. My sister's sponsor helped change my life, change my sister's life. That letter means a lot for them, a lot.
Wonderful, thank you. We'll ask you another question in a moment. James, it's very powerful. I'm quite moved. Can you put into words what compassion means to you and why you work for it?
I've been reading the book of Isaiah quite a lot lately, and at the beginning of Isaiah, God commissions him, and he commissions him to deliver a message to the people of God. And that message is ultimately a message of hope. And it's a message of hope both for the now, for the natural future, but it's also a message of hope for eternity, about the coming King, coming Saviour. And I think that's what compassion do. I think compassion bring a message of hope to children that don't have any. One of the things that you hear time and time again from children that are living in these circumstances is they have no hope. They cannot see a way out. They cannot see any means by which their future will be different to their present. And God invites Isaiah. He doesn't command him. He says, "Whom shall I send and who will go for us?" And Isaiah responds and says, "Here am I, send me." And so I feel that I want to live in response in the same way that Isaiah did, and also to echo God's words to other people, to encourage them to respond as well.
Just tell us the mechanics then, right at this point, before we ask Regina another question. What are the mechanics of sponsoring? How does it happen? How much does it cost? What happens?
So the cost of sponsorship is £28 a month, and the children that we have here today, they've already been brought into the Compassion programme, and so we always have, within each project, there are a small percentage of children that are brought in, and then we try and find them a sponsor. And then when we find them a sponsor, we can then bring some more children in to find them a sponsor as well. So these children are already receiving the benefits from the program, but they haven't yet been linked. Once they do that, we send them word very quickly that great news, wonderful news, you have a sponsor. And then we encourage our new sponsors to write to their child as soon as possible, and so they can receive a letter from them.
And Regina's story of it transforming the whole family, not just the individual child, is that the norm? Is that what normally happens?
Absolutely. I think in many of the communities we work, their sense of community is very different. We have a very individualistic culture, and so people see a blessing of one child in a family. You can understand that Compassion want to help as many children as they can, but they have to spread that help around as many families as they possibly can and not just concentrate on one. And so people naturally feel concerned that one child's going to get the benefit and the other one isn't. But as Regina has beautifully articulated, it blesses the whole family, it blesses the whole community, and that's a very, very common testimony we get from sponsored children.
Okay. Regina, thank you for holding on and bearing with us. You talked about your Christian faith. Just tell us a little bit about how that came about.
So I didn't mention that Compassion has an area we call the spiritual area. I'm translating from Spanish. But I will be very grateful to Compassion always, because I could meet Jesus through Compassion. Because Compassion, I just want to serve God, follow Him, and then do what I can to help others how He did. Because God is amazing. If every child who is getting a sponsor or who will go to sponsor know God or not Jesus, their life is fixed. Having God in our life is the best. To make decisions, to look ahead, just I would say, Compassion gave me God, gave me Jesus. For me, that's the best. I can't describe. If you are praying for that children, if you are sponsoring, you are giving God, their life it will be okay. They will be fine, because God will be with them always. For me, that's the best. I want to follow God. I want to serve God. I want to do, because He did a lot. Sorry, I just don't know how to describe, but for me, God is the best that happened in my life.
No, that's fantastic. Thank you. I don't know if there's one question anybody else wants to ask, or if there's a question, James, that you want to ask Regina.
I was just going to ask, you've got your beautiful son. What are your hopes and dreams for the future? What are your hopes and dreams for your son?
First is he can know Jesus as a Lord and Savior. Is my first thing I want. And then just he can be humble and serve. He is sleeping. His heart can be to help others. Because I receive, I want to give back. Not for force, but because I'm very grateful to the people who help me, Compassion especially. And I just want him to follow God.
Regina, we're going to say goodbye to you. I think if I point in that way, I think you can see me. There we go. Yeah, we're going to say goodbye. Thank you so much.
Very much.
Everybody's waving here to you. I know you can't see, but I'm passing on the waves to you. Bless you and thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye. We're going to talk with Doki and James if you'd like to come and join me, and we're going to sit down. But just tell us a little bit about yourself and what you do in South London.
My name is Doki. I work with Lambeth College. I work as a study practitioner. In other words, I work with special needs. I teach digital skills.
You teach skills to special needs?
Digital skills.
Digital skills.
Yes.
Okay, brilliant. And just for a moment or two, just tell us where life began for you and your early years.
Life began for me from Uganda, the northern parts of Uganda. And anyone who's got a bit of history of northern Uganda, you know that we went through a civil war that lasted for over 30 years. That was where my life began. I was born in the war. I would say every time I see a war going on, like the Syrian crisis, then the Ukraine, it takes me back. In the war, we lost everything. And when I say we lost everything, we lost our home, because every evening they would tell you to go and find a safe bush for the night. So because the homes were not safe. Or most of the time you came back and your houses have been burnt down, so you have to start afresh. Or the rebels have taken over the homestead, so you have no home. You have to go and find somewhere else. So the bushes were our homes.
Okay, and so you're in that war situation, and just tell us a little bit about the next story, the next part of the journey, and your mother and your sister.
During the war, my sister was about 12, and on her way to school, she was abducted by the rebels. The reason as to why the rebels did that was because to them, they wanted young, it was easier to brainwash a child, so my sister was of age for them as a wife, and the boys would become young soldiers. And when my sister was taken, my mother had to go after the rebels to find them. So that was it. My mom was gone. We were not sure if we would ever see her or my sister again. So because of that, usually when the rebels abduct a child from a family, they're telling you we're coming back for the rest of the children you have, because they know the background of that child. So my father had to find a safe place for us to go. So we ended up in Kampala, the capital city.
So your father took you and left. You didn't know where your mother was, and you didn't know where your sister was, and you had to flee.
Yes, we had to. How we got to Kampala, I don't know, because all I remember is we had to walk for about a week to get to the next district so we can find transport that would take us to Kampala.
And how old were you at this point?
Was about 6, 7.
6 or 7, okay. And just tell us then how compassion came into your life.
Like Compassion always says, they work with the local church. And there was a Baptist church nearby that we used to go to. Like I said earlier, we used to forcefully, my dad would force us to go to the church. So one of the pastors in that church knew what my family was going through. And he came and told us about Compassion. And so unfortunately, when he told us about Compassion, they were not taking in any children into the project. But then he told us when the time comes, we can join. Unfortunately, on the day they were doing that, my dad wasn't home. He had to go looking for work. And so we saw these kids queuing up And so we also joined the queue. That's how we became part of Compassion. Yes.
Okay. And just so the home that you would just describe your living conditions at that moment in Kampala.
So when we came to Kampala, because my dad had his own children to look after, plus a few cousins who had been orphaned by the war, so we were 13 kids.
So he had 13 children to look after.
Yes, plus my dad, we 14 of us in one room. We ended up in one room, and like I said earlier, the room was about the size of half of this stage.
Half of the platform here.
Yes.
14 of you. One adult and 13 children.
Yes. And that was our living room. It was our bedroom. There was no toilets in the area, no bathrooms. So you had to wait for the dark, then go and have a bath.
And education and health at that time before Compassion, what was that like?
A few of us had the opportunity to go to school. Not every child was able to. The reason being was my dad could only afford for a few. But at some point, most of us, the girls, had to sit home because in Africa, they would rather send the boy to school than a girl. And so most of the time we fended for ourselves. We had to actually grow up. You had to mature because you had to look after the family. I did a lot of rock quarrying, like breaking rocks to help out at home. One time my sister said, you know what, let's just boil water so neighbors would think we're going to have something to eat. But we had not eaten for a few days, and that was how we were living. Yeah.
So you cooked water so it would feel like a meal?
Yes.
Okay. James, tell us what happened with Compassion and how that changed your situation.
So when I was told that I found a sponsor, the joy that came to me, I had to share it. I had to make sure everyone knew. So I came back running, telling everyone, "Yay, I'm being sponsored by some white guy in America." Yeah, and thank God it was from America. So, yeah, that alone told me that out of the many children, he's picked me. Somebody really wants me to be somebody in life, and he was going to make me somebody. I was going to be, I mattered to someone. So out of the many, I was there. He saw my picture and he picked me. But that wasn't the last news for me. The very first day, I received a letter from my sponsor. Earlier on, I was laughing because someone from the congregation said that he wasn't really bothered about writing letters, but I'm here to encourage you that it's very important. So when I received my first letter, that was my second announcement. I had to make sure everyone read it, because to me, that letter was my assurance that he was real, that they were not just telling me that someone was there. Seeing the letter and the words of encouragement told me that this gentleman is real, he's really there. My parents have kept my letters till today, so that has been very important. But the thing is, Compassion made sure my spiritual nurturing was on point. I received my first Bible from Compassion. I learned to love. I learned that the love of Christ is not for just for certain people. It was for everyone. I was part of that love, and I learned to let go. I learned to forgive, because at that point I had not. I felt like my mother had just abandoned me during that time. But then I learned to let go. I learned to forgive my mom through Compassion, through what Compassion taught me about forgiveness. But more so, compassion made sure we got enough nutritional care. The reason as to why I say this is because it wasn't just from the project that we had food. Compassion made sure my family received food for the week. So every time we went to the project on Saturday, we came back home with food for the family for the week. So they made sure we got that. My medical care was paid for. My school fees was catered for by Compassion.
We've got some box of tissues over there, James. If you just want to run and get those, just in case I get going, in case I start off as well. Just tell us then what happened next through your teenage years. Tell us the next part of your story.
After my A level, I went to university. That was when I was coming off the project. I studied computer science, but that has not been the end of it. In Compassion, you're told a lot of things. We are told things like all sorts of hand skills, things like catering, tailoring. So I went to the catering bit. And for that, I'll tell you this, I make some of the best cakes. So, yeah, so that was, I came here because my sister is here. And the sister I'm talking about was the one who was abducted by the rebels. After about 4 years, we received a letter from someone saying that they had spotted them somewhere. That was to tell us that my mom had finally found my sister. So my sister Defron came back, but struggled a lot with mental health. Till today, she still has ups and downs. But for her to give back to society, she's now working as a social worker for mental health. And through Compassion, my sister received Christ. Because she would sometimes come and join us as well, and she received she received counseling from Compassion, from the Compassion workers. So Compassion has done a lot to my family.
And what do you hope for the future?
As sponsors, you might think that there are too many children to look after, but no, actually, what I always say is it starts with one child, and when you change one child's life, you've changed a whole family. And when you change a family, who do you change? You've changed a community, and when you change a community, who do you change? You've changed a whole nation. So it just starts with one child. So every time one child, I see a future in that child. And with my sponsored children, I see that because I'm doing that, I see a future in them. I want to make sure they do not go through what I went through. The other thing as well is because of what I'm doing as a job is because where I come from, things to do with special needs is really not that. It's not really highly considered in Uganda, so I'm trying to learn from here so I can take it back to Uganda as well and teach them how that we are all one, we are all the same.
So you hope to go back to Uganda with
Yes.
all that you've received?
Yes.
We've had a few questions, but I think you've answered most of them. James, is there a question you wanted to ask?
Well, we were in Grow Together earlier, and one of the children asked a brilliant question. They asked, so I'm just going to steal their question. If compassion hadn't come into your life, what do you think would have happened to you?
Most of the girls my age were married off at about 14, 15. And when I say married off, that's like an arranged marriage. They have to find someone older who can look after you, not just you, look after your family as well. And if Compassion had not taken me, I'm sure I would have been married off at that age, or maybe I would have been dead by now, died of AIDS, because the time I grew up, that was the time when the AIDS pandemic was a lot in Uganda.
We were gently trying to explain to the children that to be married at 14 is not romantic and nice.
Yes.
It's slavery and abuse.
Yes.
And that's what you feel saved from. If you have one final thing that you wanted to say to anybody who just here, what would it be?
All I want to say is thank you. Thank you for all that you're doing for these children, and whatever you've done to every child, you've done to me. Meeting you is like meeting my own sponsor, so thank you for being my sponsors.
Oh, bless you. We want to pray for you. And is there anything you particularly like us to pray for you?
Yes. Before the pandemic, I set up something that, because when I was growing up, we had issues with, when it came to our time of the month as women. And every time, because parents could not afford sanitary towels. So during that time, as a girl, you had to stay home. So getting to that age, any girl that stays home, before you know it, by the time they're going back to school, a girl is pregnant. So I set up something whereby we collect sanitary pads for girls in third world countries and send it to them. But unfortunately, pandemic came up, we had to shut down for a bit, and I'm hoping that we can reset it again soon.
Brilliant. Can we say thank you so much for joining with us, and safe journey home? And maybe we want to express our appreciation. Thank you.
Watching this online, you can still get involved with supporting Compassion. There's 3 ways you can do that using technology. You can text the code SPONSOR SCBC to 88802. You can, if you're familiar with QR codes, you can scan that with your phone's camera, or you can follow the link compassionuk.org/hope/SCBC, and they will take you through to a dedicated web page where there are children reserved for this church that are waiting to be sponsored. For those of you here in person, you're very welcome, if you're into technology, to do it that way.